This is the fourth week of our Lenten series, When God Doesn't Make Sense. So far, we've looked at why God says no to seemingly good things in life, oftentimes because they're not so good for us after all. We looked at why God allows people to suffer and die, a difficult topic, but one that can lead us into a deeper understanding of Christ's cross and to trust Jesus, who knew suffering and death himself. We looked at those times when it seems God is uncooperative and learned that sometimes that can be on purpose. Those obstacles can force us to lean into God and can build our character. This week, we'll take a look at something we can do, a mindset we can have when difficult moments and times come our way to help us use our sufferings and challenges and questions for growth. We have choices when it comes to how we handle hard and confusing times. One common response is to brush it under the rug or cover the problem up with a mask, acting like we're fine. We put on a face, we grin and bear it. We run to distractions. Binge watching and scrolling provides plenty of opportunity for distraction. But ignoring hardship and distracting ourselves from it usually makes the problem worse, and at the very least, we never grow from the hardships because we're too busy frantically trying to focus our minds elsewhere. Bitterness and festering anger is another common approach. When faced with confusion and our hardship, we can tell ourselves, "This always happens to me." And I know that's a default that I continue to battle myself. Or we find someone to blame and resent. And sometimes that's God. But there is another way. And Jesus modeled it. Jesus' life, suffering, death, and resurrection form a kind of blueprint, a pattern of sorts for how faith can frame our hardships and confusion. To an outside observer, few things would have seemed more confusing and making no sense than the fact that Jesus, who preached about love and peace and mercy, would be so brutally executed, abandoned by many of his friends, and betrayed and treated as a criminal. It just wouldn't have made sense. Now we know that Jesus suffered on the cross for a purpose. He defeated sin and death through his dying and rising. And God raised Jesus from the dead. And an interesting side note there is that when Jesus appears to his followers after the resurrection, those wounds are still there. They're still part of his life story that led to resurrection and victory. In our lives, we can offer up our suffering, our confusion, our hardships to God and ask him to bring new life, growth, and healing into our lives. We can say resurrection. St. Paul tells us in Romans 8:28, "We know that all things work for good for those who love God, who are called according to his purpose." It's important that we have an openness and willingness to let God work our hardships for good, to ask God to take our suffering and turn it into new life, into resurrection, fitting the framework that Jesus showed us of life, death, resurrection. We can plug our suffering, our hardships, you can say our deaths, into that pattern of life, death, and resurrection by bringing our hardships to God. We heard an example of God working suffering for good in the gospel this past weekend. Jesus was asked, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "Neither he nor his parents sinned. It is so that the works of God might be made visible through him." That the works of God might be made visible through him. So this seems to show us that not only can God work good through the suffering that we offer up to him, but it can also glorify God. People can see God at work when we offer it to the Lord to bring good out of it. St. Paul, for example, had some kind of a physical ailment. He called it a thorn in his flesh. And here's how he handled it. He says, 3 times I begged the Lord about this, that it might leave me. But he, the Lord, said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for power is made perfect in weakness." And St. Paul goes on to say, "I will rather boast most gladly about my weaknesses, in order that the power of Christ may dwell within me. Therefore, I'm content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and constraints for the sake of Christ. For when I am weak, then I am strong. St. Paul recognized that his weaknesses, his hardships, were an opportunity for God's strength to be part of his life. They created an opportunity to rely on God for strength. So, how will you choose to frame the suffering and hardships that just don't make sense? What if you offered it to God to fit into the pattern Jesus modeled? Life, death, resurrection. God can bring good even out of the bad and difficult things. He is God after all. What if you started seeing your weaknesses or challenges as an opportunity for God's strength to carry you through? You don't need to be the hero. Let God be the hero who gives you strength that you can never have on your own. And speaking of not being on your own, learning to trust God happens best when we have a circle of people we can lean on when times get tough and we need encouragement and faith. When we need help to trust God. Because we know when we're in the middle of suffering, it's hard in the midst of all that to stay trusting. We need people around us to support us, to pray for us and with us. That's why it's so important to have a small group. We hope you've been able to begin to build that kind of support community in your group over these past few weeks. Okay, now one final reminder before you move into conversation. Save the date for March 29th. That's Palm Sunday at the 9 a.m. Mass. We will have a blessing for all who participated in small groups. We hope to see you there. Have a great conversation.